Welcome everyone, another edition of Ali Tech Talks. Today we're going to be talking about technology services in a way that is more than just technology. It's really about documentation. It's really about technical documentation. My name is Oscar Garcia, CTO of Ali Global and Technology Services. I have here with me.
My name is Heberth Campos. I'm VP of Technology Services at Ali Global.
Thank you, Heberth, today for joining us on this exciting new edition of Ali Tech Talks. It's a new service, and for me, it's always very exciting to have a new service being provided to our customers and to the world, honestly. So we're launching technology services, technical documentation. Tell us, what is that all about?
Well, technical documentation is a practice that the organization should have. Actually, one of the research and one of the biggest and most important universities in the United States, they did their research and they found that one of the most important topics that the organizations are aware that they have is the technical documentation, right? But by the other hand, is one of the less practices that they do in a day-to-day basis, right? Well, technical documentation is a practice, right? Technical documentation is the practice that the organization should have in order to document all their processes or the tools, all the components that are part of the organization, right? So it's very important. But the truth is that few organizations will have the time in order to do that activity because we have more important activities. But basically that's it. It's the documentation of critical tools and processes to describe the behavior of the organizations.
As an engineer thinking about this, the true challenge is that when you are in the bits and bolts and you are coding and you want to make your creation come to life, you are not thinking about who is going to read this stuff. You just want to get it done, basically. So let me see if I get this correct. So I'm an engineer here, very cool, trying to get my things out there, getting my cup of coffee, make sure things get developed. I develop things and then you put them out there. And then a few years later, somebody has to read that code, read what it's all about, and also the part of the customer who is going to use the software or the piece of engineering that is out there. That's where the service kicks in, or this practice kicks in, and make sure that the engineer focus on what needs to be delivered, and then the service that is being provided by technology services or the practice, as you mentioned, will kick in and make sure this is documented. Is that a fair statement to say, or that I'm missing something here?
No, I think that you get the point. I mean, the new fashion of how the organization are developing projects and products, they are based on the business value, right? And what is the business value is the product, right? The system, the tools, the applications, right? And basically, the organizations are focusing on how to increase their revenue, right? How to modify some processes or how to solve problems for their users and clients. And the reality is that when we are developing those projects, we have target dates, right? We have to deliver a piece of software or component in any specific date, right? And the reality is that the development team is working with that target in mind, right? They are working in order to develop and build products for their customers, right? But they are not thinking about, I'm going to document this and that, right? Even with the Scrum, right? With the Scrum, well, it's something that's changing, but with the Scrum, we need to document what is really important for the organizations, right? But a few times I have seen that the organization are doing some kind of documents are part of the sprints, right? I mean, it's very weird when we see companies with user stories and the product backlog containing a specific task in order to document the processes. That's very weird, but it's natural. I mean, we are going to be focused just delivering value, and the value is applications, right? The documents are very important, the documentation is very important, but we have developers, right, with high skills developing software, but probably they are not thinking about spending some time trying to write documents or creating diagrams or creating any kind of product that is not part of the deliverable that will be put in front of the customers, right?
Right. And I'm thinking about, when we're doing this, I'm getting in the customer side, my software is very precious. Who is going to document this? So is there staff? Our staff is engineers, right, that do this for us. So it's engineers talking to engineers, and also engineers getting the word out there for the user. Is that a fair statement? Because it's not easy to read code, actually.
It's not easy, right? But when, let's say that we are in 3 years, we are developing a product this year, right? In 3 years, something is creating some kind of bugs or something is broken in the process. And probably we don't have the developers that have created the product in the organization, right? So what the organization will do, right, is try to do a research of what they have coded 3 years ago, right? What are the processes and tools that we have used, how we have used them, what was the logic behind the application, right? And it's very complicated, right? So the organizations are spending a lot of money, investing time trying to do reverse engineering, trying to interpret what they have in the tool, right? And that's very complicated, right? So that's one important piece. The other piece that you were talking about is, yes, I mean, in order to have a good technical documentation, we have to have good engineers, right? But it's a different practice. I mean, the developers, I truly believe that should be focused on building applications, building software, right? But technical documentation, actually, I see them as another team, right? Because they are specialized in what kind of diagrams are we going to use, right?
And actually, it looks like a check and balance, because if an engineer cannot pick up what other is saying or putting in the code, it's a risk for the organization, because as you are building your software, because you're creating a platform for serving your customers, you want that to be fully, I will say, resource free. I mean, agnostic of who is looking at it. So by doing this, you're taking the risk off. And I know it's a challenge sometimes for the engineer thinking, oh, they're taking everything away from me. It's not. It's actually making your life easier, because the engineers that are working on the product can focus on more value added into the future. Is that right to what you see here?
Absolutely. I mean, the organizations are being focused on persons, right? So we are having organizations that are dependent to the developers, not to the processes. So when we have seen a lot of organizations where they are worried about when one developer is changing their job to another company or in the same organization, right? And they think, oh, what we are going to do with the application.
That's right. It makes a lot of pressure and everybody makes it nervous, right?
Yes, because the documentation, the logic of that software is inside of the heads on each developer, right? So instead of be process-centric, we are person-centric, right? So what happened, right, in the pandemic, right, for example? What the organization were doing, if someone gets COVID, right, you were going to be out of the office for a couple of weeks. And in that time, it was a nightmare for a lot of organizations that were dependent on persons, right? So instead of doing that, I think that the right process is to have a good documentation. So you will be sure that probably someone else will be replacing people in the team. Someone will be coming to our team because the team is getting bigger, right? So we have that documents there, and they can read the documents, understand in a better way the systems, and the onboarding process will be more easier, right? The offboarding process also will be more easier also, because we are sure that we have all the important processes, tools, and techniques documented in one specific area. Right.
As a CTO, I can tell you something. When you're coding and you have your developers in really in your table, and then you know that piece of code is so important, and that developer just walk out of the door, you're praying that, please God, bring you him tomorrow because I don't want to die. So that's where we kicked in. Excellent. I mean, I can see that happen. So it's a reduced risk. So for wrapping up, how the process will work. If I wanted to get into technical documentation, how would that work? Because it has to be pretty easy.
Do you mean how we do or work?
Yes. If I engage you, right, as a technology services to document my system, how that works?
Okay, that's a process that will take time, right? The organization should understand that trying to document a system, and I'm not talking about only application, Oscar. I'm talking about networking, databases, servers, cloud. What do you have in the cloud? I mean, a lot of organizations, they know that I have a lot of things in the cloud, but they don't have exactly a picture of what they have there, right? And what are the connectivities.
Exactly.
So I'm not talking about just documenting an application. It's more than that, right? So this is a time that will consume time, all right? And this is a process that will consume time. So what we do on the initial phase is a due diligence, right? So we have several meetings with the technical team, with our clients. We try to identify if they have a CMDB, for example, or if they have an inventory of the components, tools, or etc. And if they don't have that kind of documentation, we build them, right? We try to identify which are the system, where they are connected. So we try to build the first draft of an inventory for the companies, right? After that, then we start digging inside on each of the systems or components, right? With some series of interviews, with workshops, with technical meetings. When we evaluate each of these components and identify what they have inside, right? And we start creating in that time different diagrams, right? So we work a lot with UML, trying to build diagram classes, flow charts, Gantt charts, time scatter diagrams, the different diagrams. It will depend, right? So our engineers will see the process, will see the tools, and they will identify which are the documents that are more important to document that specific component. I mean, there is no specific set of diagrams that should be used for each of the components, right? Each of the components should have different variables that should be analyzed and identify what we are going to document.
And to wrap it up here, the good thing about that is that people will say, you know what, we can do that ourselves. First of all, there is no time because the developer, the engineer, whoever is going to do it is going to focus and get things done. But most important, what I've seen for our service is that we have done it so many times. We know exactly what tools we have, what tools we're using, what diagrams are perfect for the match, that rather than just figure that out, our experts, which are engineers as well, talking to engineers, will document process, will document networks, cloud, and get it done for us. So it's really, really interesting. So I'm guessing there's two things that will come out of this. First of all, we really focus. So that means that we're going to create more value as an organization because I can rely on you. And then we're going to reduce risk, right? Which ends up having more income or revenue coming our way and more profit. So any last thoughts that you want to share with the audience here, Heberth? It was very interesting. I'm pretty sure that we have to use it a lot more than we've been using so far.
Yeah, I mean, having applications without documents, it's like trying to build houses or buildings without any plan, right? Without any diagram, without anything, right? It's try to build something without any base, right? So I think that it's very important for the organizations to take some time trying to identify which are their critical tools and try to invest time and resources trying to develop some kind of documentation to make sure that everything is there, right? We are not dependent on the developers.
Absolutely.
We are developing documents that will help the organization to focus and to be dependent on the processes, not persons.
Actually, you are converting, and this is a fact, you are converting an organization for whatever the software is or the piece of technology into really a digital asset for that organization. So thank you so much, really.
No,
thank
you
for
having me.
Absolutely. So thank you for the audience for having the time to look at this video today. You can find us online at allyglobal.com, and under the services, you'll see technology services. You can find out more about our services there. So that's great. Thank you so much for watching again. We are Technology Services. We are Ally Global. See you next time.